That was the Wisconsin Badgers performance we have all been waiting for. I'm Rajiv. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective. Woo-hoo! Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, well, we had a fantastic performance against the Purdue Boilermakers, 52-6. Can you believe it? We get into the details of the game. We go out and give out some awards for the Purdue game and look ahead. How does this affect our season? We are at the Bucky Report on Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you can find your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button so you know when we make new content. Justin, your score prediction for this game was 31-13, an 18-point Badger win. Mine was 34-17, a 17-point Badger win. If you put those two together, you still don't get to it. A 46-point drubbing of the Purdue Boilermakers. Frankly, something that we've all wanted to see. An interesting week in the Big Ten as well, with our hated rivals winning. We'll get into that a little bit. What are your thoughts, man? I mean, are you still pumped? Let me tell you this. The sporting world did everything in its power to bring down my mood after seeing Minnesota win last night, after seeing my English soccer team lose this morning, and seeing like my Colts lose today.
Wrexham won.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a Wrexham fan. Everything, it was trying to take everything away from me, but though it's okay. You can't bring down the high that I'm still on from the Badger victory yesterday. How are you today, my friend?
I'm good, and I just want to go on my mini tirade here real quick before we get started. We talked about this a little before we came on. I would like to go out there and just call out all the soft-headed USC fans that took offense to me saying that I wasn't overly impressed with their defense and that I thought that they would struggle, because apparently they have a little bit of a problem with being able to look at things from a big picture perspective. I wasn't calling USC's defense bad because of us. I was calling USC's defense bad because if you have playoff aspirations like USC did after beating us, that defense was not going to play against a good offense. And what did we see? They go play a one-dimensional Minnesota team and promptly get their butts kicked in by a team that can do nothing but run the football and have no answers to stopping them. So I would just like to say salute to you guys for being idiots, like that can't look at their team in a rational, like reasonable light and think that you had God's gift to defense. Well, guess what? You don't.
You know, I really was very actively rooting for USC last night because I didn't want to see Minnesota win. Justin, when I texted him, he said, I want USC to lose just so I can give it to their fans, which here he did. That's great. I mean, I listen, I was at USC last week. Those fans were not very nice. And you're 1-2, and you're about to go 1-3 in the conference because you're not beating Penn State next week. Anyway, Justin, we won 52-6. Are you? I mean, this is awesome. What an amazing performance. What are some of your big picture takeaways from the game?
Big picture takeaways. Braedyn Locke looked tremendous in this game in the second half. It's what every fan from the Badger perspective has been waiting for from him, to show that he could get on a hot streak and basically be efficient. That was the one thing. Like, we'd seen him have a drive here and there where he looked pretty good, but he never had a game where he looked overly impressive for an entire game. Well, he looked pretty good in this game. One takeaway I will have, one negative I will have on this for him, he's not going to have that kind of time probably in any game coming up on the remainder of the schedule. He does have to be more decisive, but he was incredible in this game. And I think the confidence that he'll gain from this will hopefully really help him moving forward in being able to, show some growth the remainder of the season and get more confident in his reads and what he sees on the field. He does a pretty good job of seeing the field. I will say that. Like, sometimes he may not handle the rush the best, but he definitely has an idea of what he's doing out there. And we haven't always had that at Wisconsin, which is something nice to see. Other than that, the receivers. We have been waiting for Trech to take off for a long time. And, I was touting him all season long. And I'm sure there were fans that weren't as in deep watching him to know what he truly was. This is the guy that we saw in his high school film. Like, this is a guy that absolutely carved up top tier defenses in high school. And this is what I expected him to be when he came here. Now, he's not going to do this every week, but he's a guy that can get you 60 yards on the week. Like, I have no doubt about that. You put him and Pauling in there together, and right now, Pauling's in a bit of a slump. So I don't have a problem with Trech picking up the reins there and getting more play. Other than that, CJ Williams had a great game. He had a great game. I thought Dupree showed some things. I think he needs more consistent carries to actually get rolling. I mean, you can't give him one carry a drive and expect him to do it. But one thing I will kick back on Ryan is when he kind of talked about how low his yards per carry was. And I was
I brought that up. It is low. It was low, 3.4.
But I look at it too, and I'm like, well, Tawee had a couple of touchdown runs that really pushed up his total. If you look at it on the starter, like he had 2 long touchdown runs that basically counted for half of his yardage. So he had 17 carries for probably about 55, 60 yards, maybe after that. And it's like, or maybe 50. Yeah, it's probably about 50 because he had 94 yards. And I think he had a 20-yard touchdown run and an 18-yard one. So the way I look at it is they were basically running for the same yardage, and you have one guy who's inexperienced and is just getting his feet wet, and you have one guy that's the bell cow that's getting consistent reps. I think we would see similar broken runs from Dupree if he was getting regular carries. It's just he's not getting consistent carries to do it.
I mean, the yards per carry is going to be a thing. I mean, it was certainly something that you brought up a lot with Chez, so it's something that we need to watch.
Absolutely, and I will. But he's not getting the carries that Chez.
That's fair. I agree with that. He does need to get the carries. It's very clear that the one is definitely going to be Walker, the 2 is going to be Dupree, and then Yak is going to be kind of like that third spare guy.
And Dylan Jones is pushing his way in too.
And that's good. I mean, he's pushing his way through, which is excellent. My big picture takeaways was that this is just something that we badly needed as Badger fans, and this team, the fan base, the players, the coaches, you name it. This is what we needed, because we have been beaten down. And although we were 2-2 going into this game, it just felt like it was a bad 2-2. And now all of a sudden we're 3-2. We have momentum. We have 2 games ahead of us that we're going to get into later. We're going to get into all the kind of the schedule breakdown and how that shakes out. But the confidence, Justin, that this builds and this gives the players on this team is so critical. You can't go into the schedule that we have if you don't have the confidence. And I think offensively we played very well. I think Phil Longo, which we're going to get into this discussion, but wow, I mean, it looks like all of a sudden, if that's what his offense looks like routinely, that could be special. That's really nice to see. Obviously the offensive line is another thing I just want to point out. Wow. Like, just once again, they're doing their thing. We have a Wisconsin offensive line now, and we've got offensive line of the future, mind you. Kevin Haywood had 35 snaps on the field yesterday. He looked great, got an 84 pass block rating, the 3rd highest on the team. I mean, he is going to be the guy, and there's so much youth popping up throughout the team, guys getting looks. All of a sudden, it's weird to take a team like Purdue that's really bad and to talk about how they're basically going to be a catalyst for us, but it is like we got him at the right time. We're coming off 2 losses that were tough, and it can really kickstart the way things work. And I'm very appreciative of that, and I think that all Badger fans can rest a little easier and feel a little more comfortable about where this team is. Why do you think it was so good yesterday? I mean, obviously, other than Purdue being really bad, what do you think we did specifically well in this game, regardless of the opponent, that really sort of help? Because listen, we haven't scored 40 points in a long time. We scored 52. Like, what did we do differently, and what did you specifically like?
Number one, I would say that the offensive line was incredible in this game. Their pass blocking was just exceptional. We felt no pressure in this game. And because of that, he had all the time in the world to sit back there and survey and wait for guys to pop open. Purdue made a couple of somebody had compared this to the Illinois game for Mertz. And I think if you look at it, the more I look at the film from this game, it's not remotely in the same ballpark. Like, Mertz was throwing to wide open guys in windows, and there was some tight coverage that Braedyn Locke was threading the needle on. Now, Purdue's not a very good team, and there will be better defenses that we play, but it was not like a ton of defensive breakdowns. Like the Trech one was a defensive breakdown because a guy decided to, it looks like he kind of ad-libbed in the middle of the play and decided, I'm going to get pressure on him because nobody's coming. And when that happened, he opened a window for the pass to Trech. Other than that, I mean, Trech's second touchdown, he had somebody on him. The pass to CJ Williams that ended up on the one right before the half was just a well-designed play that he ran a good route on and got his guy in a bad spot. Same thing kind of with the Vinny Anthony play. Like, that's a play that is meant to leverage that corner and put him in a spot where he's got to choose whether he's going to come up on the quarterback or stay with the receiver. Now, I think we'd both agree when it's Braedyn Locke out there running, you'll take your chances and just let him have the 10 yards rather than just leaving the wide receiver going up. And that's my gut instinct going forward, is that the corner is going to drop and you're going to have to see Braedyn Locke just take the 5 yards or whatever he can get out of that play.
Dark Ray says Purdue's horrible, though. We have to repeat this in the next 2 games where this was just a fluke. I hear that, and there's a good amount of comments here about the Purdue being a horrible opponent. Yes, I understand that logic, and Purdue is really bad. But this is what we wanted. We wanted to beat up on bad teams. We can't control how bad Purdue is. What we can do is win by 46 points, which, by the way, we came nowhere near that in Western Michigan and nowhere near that against South Dakota. Similar opponents to Purdue. That is why I'm so excited. Bo Dragon says Notre Dame dropped almost 70 on Purdue. Yeah, and we dropped 52. So that, to me,
and we were basically running clock from middle of the third quarter on.
I mean, ultimately, we wanted a game like this. We got a game like this. Tell me, Justin, what do you think this means for this team? What does a win like this mean for the Badgers?
Well, so my gut instinct is this is a huge game for this team moving forward for Rutgers, who Rutgers just had some of their confidence shaken playing Nebraska, and they probably should have won that game. Like, they botched a bunch of stuff in that game that cost them points against Nebraska. And because of that, they probably got their first loss. Trech's fan or Reggie's fan base is coming to visit him. But what I will say is, I think this gives them, whether or not this team, we're obviously not going to have the same level of success against Rutgers, but what it does is it gives a base for these players to understand what they're looking at going forward and to have something to be like, I can have success and know how to play against Rutgers. And I think that that's the way I look at it. Is it doesn't matter. Like, if we can get to 28 points against Rutgers, I think that will probably win that game, because I don't think they'll be able to pass on us. I think Kaliak-Manis is just bad as a quarterback.
Kaliak-Manis did not look good at all yesterday. Yeah, I mean, look, the Rutgers thing is really going to be an interesting game. And Michael Wagner says, can we just enjoy this week? This is kind of where I'm at, Michael. I just feel like what it means for me is that we're finally able to celebrate a big freaking victory. Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds silly. I know there's a lot of people that are like, but it's just Purdue. I don't care. I don't. Like, we haven't gotten this yet. We haven't gotten this for, frankly, a long time. Like, since last Minnesota game, since the Axe game last November was the last time that we actually got to really celebrate a win. That's been a long time. And it means a lot to me to be able to just say, yeah, this is great. Let's use this as a springboard. For me, the one thing I want to see is this is a springboard. It's a springboard for Longo's offense, and it's a springboard for what this team can actually do.
I don't even think we felt this good off of that game, because this is the first time we've looked at it and been like, wow, that looks formidable. Like, against Minnesota, it looked better than what it had been looking like, but it wasn't like we were like, wow, the offense looked amazing in this game. This game, the offense looked amazing. Like, they absolutely carved up Purdue. And that's not to say, I mean, what I want to see, like, I guess the comparable version of this against Minnesota would have been like putting up 42 on them. And then it would have been like, wow, we blew the doors off of them.
No doubt. L Mills and other news, some notable Badgers out there for Sunday Night Football. I was just watching the game before. Herbig and Watt are playing out of their minds, by the way, which is just so fun. And Jake Ferguson's out there. Keanu Benton's out there. It is great to see Badgers playing very well in the NFL. And Tanner Bortolini got his second start for my Colts today at center. He played great again. He played really nice. Sadly, we just have a lot of other injuries on our team, which is hurting Bortolini's numbers. But nonetheless, so let's talk a little bit more about the offense. You know, you just kind of mentioned it. we've given Longo a fair, in my opinion, amount of crap for what we've seen and how inconsistent this offense has been. And yesterday in the second half, albeit against a bad team, it got to run the way that Phil Longo wants it to run. I know we were playing a very undermanned opponent, but it's the first time we've even seen that against an undermanned opponent. We've seen it like that. Do you feel like did he show improvement in your eyes, or how are you on Longo post this game? What kind of impact did this game have on any way that you feel about Phil Longo?
I think it felt like he got more confident as the game went on because Locke was handling things. And one thing I will say is in Locke's, like for the offense in general, I think these guys just made plays. Like Green and Pauling this year haven't been making plays. And what we see in this game, when guys were given opportunity, Vinny Anthony, we saw Trech, we saw CJ Williams all make plays when they were given opportunity. And because of that, we were able to get the offense consistently moving. And I think that that's part of it. Like we've seen Pauling have a number of like unforgivable, frankly, drops this season where it's like, this is a routine catch for the most part, and you're dropping the football. He had one in this game, the early one. And then also the interception. That was a ball that probably should have been caught that he got injured on. Like you look at it and it's like, he's had one or two drops every single game on balls that are catchable. We can't afford to have that from a receiver.
Especially our number one and our guy that we've relied on the most. And it is an interesting discussion.
He's the safety valve.
The Will Pauling thing, I mean, yeah, that I know exactly the catch you're talking about. We were talking about it during the game. Like he didn't attack the ball. He didn't go out and really be purposeful with going to get it. And then the defender made a big play. He got hurt. Bryson Green's a little banged up as well. But I think obviously now the discussion is how many snaps like will Trech take away from Will Pauling? Because even if he does come back, Trech has proven that he needs to be on the field. Thank you for the jet sweeps, Phil Longo. Appreciate that. And getting him involved in the game. And I feel like that's an important piece, right? Like, where is he going to fit and how many snaps is he going to take away from Pauling? And it's okay if he does. And we've said many times, both of them on the field is perfect. Have them both out there. So I hope that he doesn't. I don't want to see Trech's numbers go down, even if Pauling comes back healthy. I don't want it to be where, well, since Pauling was hurt, Trech got a run, but I want him to get run in every game. And I think that is important. And if that means pulling Pauling back a little bit, that's what it means. Maybe he's more fresh for a longer period of time and he can be more impactful because, frankly, Pauling has been a little bit off and it is showing in the offensive performance.
I think what this tells me is going into the next game, if Pauling isn't 100%, you tell him, hey, sit it out. Wait, Trech is feeling it. He seems like he's in good condition. You can take your time and come back. Like, we don't have to have you out on the field in order to be able to be productive. That's kind of how I feel about it, at least. Maybe that helps him kind of get his head together more mentally, which I think he kind of needs because it seems like he's a little off all year long so far. And it's not like we're talking about him laying out for catches that he's missing. We're talking about him missing some stuff that's, if you're talking about going to the NFL, these are catches that have to be made because this is the type of stuff that you're putting on film, difficult catches for that level. And most of these aren't even really that difficult. They're catches that are routine catches to NFL guys.
No doubt. No doubt. Will Hanna says that catch by Williams was outstanding. The way he was as high as he could go after having to twist his body. Outstanding. Yes, CJ Williams had definitely one of the better games. And of course, Will Hanna, we always love this chat. Tonight's meal for the show, old-fashioned meatloaf sandwiches with my homemade creamy horseradish sauce and washing it down with a bottle of 4 of Liney's Oktoberfest. Appreciate that, Will Hanna, of course. Yeah, I mean, I think that the way for me, the Longo thing, it's just it's a check bar. It's just a checkbox for me. It's like, okay, that's good. Now continue that. Like if this is what your offense can produce, I'm not going to call for you to be replaced if it looks like that the way it did in the second half with the tempo that we had, the way that we pushed up. I mean, it's like that is what it needs to be all the time. It has to be like that all the time. And we have to see growth out of what he's doing. Look, I still think he's out at the end of the year. I'm not saying he needs to be saved because of one game against Purdue. I just am happy with what I saw. And I would like to see more of that. I would like to see the creativity that he put in there and all that stuff. Like there's no reason that our offense cannot look better against any team in the Big Ten, let alone the crap that we've been watching for a few weeks.
Well, it should look at least competent against every team. Like this is what you'd expect to do against a Purdue, against a team like USC or if we're talking about what we'd like to see from this team, a Penn State type team, you're talking upper 20s, low 30s. That's what you're hoping to get out of a good offense. We haven't been good. Like, this is the first game we've looked at it and we've been like, all right, that's something to build off of. Now, there's been numerous things that I haven't liked about the way Longo has worked. Part of it has been we've had games where he just goes out there and chucks it 3 times. In the first half of this game, he was doing it. And it's one of the things I pointed out at the half. We would be kind of running the football, and the run game wasn't bad. Like, we were getting 4 yards a carry pretty consistently. And I'm looking at it, and also we'll pop off 3 straight passes and end up going into third down. It's like, knock it off. Like, get some good situations for Locke so that he's got a 3rd and 4 or whatever, so that he can sit there and just have a nice, easy read where we have the option to run the football technically in that situation. And it puts some pressure on the defense to not just sell out for the pass or to just send a bunch of rushers down his throat. And that was one of the things that I was kind of looking at. I'm like, why are you doing this? You're not really setting him up for success. Well, in the second half, Locke apparently got confident because it didn't matter. Like, they just started throwing the football and he started throwing it all over the field. Which, when was the last time we saw a Wisconsin quarterback at this point in their career do that?
And it was great to see.
Tawee.
It was really, really great to see. Let's move to defense. We pretty much almost gave up nothing, if you think about it. Like, the 2 turnovers that we had, the interception that kind of went off Pauling's back, and then the other one, which was a bad toss by Locke. They scored 3 points off each of those turnovers. Otherwise, we shut them down.
Yep.
And the one issue, though, I think we both identified already, the pass rush really wasn't there. You're going up against a weak Purdue offensive line. We expected to be able to win in the trenches. Our run defense was decent, but like, if we can't get home against Purdue, we're going to continue to have problems. And I'm hoping that things get better, but I think we kind of just where we are right now. Like, there's really not going to be much improvement in the pass rush. But I will say the bend but don't break continues. I mean, even though it's Purdue, the fact that we pretty much gave up no points other than the 6 points off turnovers, that's a pretty good look for Tressel's defense, given Purdue scored against other teams. But it was a good performance overall.
So my takeaway is that for the remainder of the season, there's just not many quarterbacks that are going to be able to hurt us. Like, you probably say Gabriel, and I think maybe Alar. Like, I don't know what to make of him so far this year. Like, they've been better with him, but he's still not somebody I look at and say he's a lights out guy. Like, Moss is a better overall passer than him, I think. So I look at it kind of like the pass rush could hurt us, but it could also, it's like, how much? As long as our coverage remains good, for the most part, we can get away with it. I'm more concerned with if there's a quarterback that can take off and run on us and cause some problems. But the run game, like, one of the takeaways from this, the run defense really hasn't been that bad this season. Like, we haven't got, other than Alabama, we haven't really gotten gashed on the ground. And then they were pretty darn good in this game again. So
yeah, 3.8 yards a carry from Purdue. They had 99 yards rushing. That's good. I mean, Devin Mockobee had 11 carries for 45 yards, which is kind of like their bell cow. And Reggie Love had 4 carries for 12. So yeah, I mean, we definitely held up. And I think a lot of it is who's playing, right? Like, that's a big piece of it. I'm going to put up a banner here if you are watching on YouTube. If you're listening to this, we'll talk through it. This is a snapshot of snap counts. Now, it's all in percentages, right? So it's percentage of total snaps. Because if you look at total snaps, like the Alabama game, we had a ton of defensive snaps. So this is as a percentage of the snaps. You can see players that are slowly decreasing in their percentage of time on the field. That's guys like Curtis Neal, Jaheim Thomas, and Jake Chaney. And Daryl Peterson for that matter. And you can see guys that are increasing their time on the field. Xavier Lucas, Leon Lowry, John Pius, Christian Allegro, who, the first couple weeks he was 10%. This past week, 37% of the snaps. And Brandon Lane started out not playing, moving up to 8%. Now he's at 24% in the Purdue game. So it's nice to see the young players, Justin, and new guys getting in here. Even Tackett, it started out nothing, and now he's at 33% in the Purdue game. Aaron Witt was, of course, injured in this past game. But it's interesting to look at this and just get a sense of, who is beginning to play more, who's beginning to play less, and then who, of course, the very bottom of this list, if you're watching on YouTube, the most diehard guys that we have, Preston Zachman and Hunter Wohler, play literally every single snap. The only reason they didn't play 100% of the snaps in the Purdue game is because we pulled all of our starters. Justin, looking at this, are you pleased with the rotation? Who's playing and how often they're playing? Or are there things that you'd like to see done differently here?
I think, number one, I think Sebastian Cheeks just earned himself some more playing time. We're going to see him out there more.
Yeah, he's up to 35% now after basically not playing at all for the first few weeks.
I think Hills is where you want to see him. Dylan Johnson, I think most of his snaps were likely in the fourth quarter when we were playing reserves in this one. Lane, I would guess, was mostly in that time frame too. So Neal, I don't really take much away from like him having less snaps in this, because if we needed him out there in the fourth, he probably would have been roughly where his normal numbers have been. I want to see Tackett still go higher. Like, I still love the way he attacks. Like he is very, very aggressive in the way he plays at times. I know that the team came out with a Cheney, one of the players of the game for this. I once again thought he was he had a couple of nice flash plays, but overall, I'm not seeing him exactly get to the quarterback as much as I'd like. And he missed in this game, which Cheeks cleaned it up, but he flat out just had Carr dead to rights and absolutely whiffed on him and chased him back up into the pocket, thankfully, which we were able to just still get the sack on him. But you think about it, that's like 5 yards in sack that we could have had. Like, that's additional yardage that can be a big deal depending on a drive. Like, you go from being a 3rd and 11 to being like a 3rd and 16. That's a big difference.
Yeah, the thing I would point out, of course, is definitely the linebackers, as you mentioned. Thomas and Cheney, 55.
Thomas played a lot better in this game.
He did play a lot better. But Cheney, I agree, he's still getting too much. Allegro is slowly increasing. I like that we've seen Allegro go from 1 in every 5 plays to now a little more than 1 in every 3, which is really nice to see. But Tackett,
seeing him bat that ball down, by the way, dropping in coverage is something. He's got so much length at linebacker.
It is something. Allegro's raw talent and skill is something that we saw last year, and we need to see more of this year. He is going to be a great player for us, and it's so nice to see him develop. And, the other thing I would mention on here is the cornerbacks we talked about. Xavier Lucas getting 55%. RJ Delancey has been getting more playing time, which is nice. And a lot of that, obviously, Hallman and Forkerin didn't play the whole game because they didn't need to play the whole game. And hopefully we get Aaron Witt back. But interesting. Overall, I think the point is that I like the rotation, and I'm glad that we're seeing the right people getting slowly increased snap counts. I think it's important. I mean, if we just saw the same numbers as we saw early in the season when Cheney was getting 100% of the snaps and Ben Barton was getting 65% of the snaps, things like that had to change, and they have been, and I appreciate that. And I think that it's a big step for us, and we are ultimately playing the better guys, and the better guys are getting more time out there, which is how we're going to develop this team for the future. We need that, and we need it for this year more than anything else.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think we know if this season is going to have the amount of growth that they need, it's going to be on the backs of young players who are going to kind of pick up the reins and take it. And it doesn't have to be true freshmen. It can be guys like Allegro, who's now a true sophomore. It can be a Tackett Curtis who gets more comfortable and is just a guy that has athletic tools that some of the other guys don't have, and a level of aggression and instincts that some of the other guys don't have. It can be Thomas taking off and finally getting comfortable, because I think it's been pretty obvious it's taken him a while to get a feel for this defense again. Corner Xavier Lucas, like he's a guy, I think by the end of the season, he's probably a starter. And that's a guy that he could be a really, really good player by the season's end. It's going to take him some time. He's taking his lumps right now. I think people need to really understand how good he could potentially be 3-4 games from now, consistently getting more reps.
Yeah, the guy is going to be fantastic, and I'm so glad that he's playing a lot, and I'm glad he's healthy after his little slip and fall earlier this year. So it's good. All right, let's, we haven't had to get to do this in a while with some actual superlatives, because we only do these after wins, because you don't want to really do them after losses. So let's start here. Let's do some superlatives, some awards from the Purdue game. We'll start with play of the day, Justin. What is your play of the day? And put your answers in the chat. I'll pop them up here a little bit so we can see what you guys think as well for our superlatives. Play of the day that you can remember.
Well, play of the day for me would probably be, I would say, the Trech the Trech 69-yard touchdown catch, because that kind of seemed like when things got rolling off of that play. Once that hit, it seems like Locke was just lights out.
For me, I actually think it's the other Trech the actual Trech pass and catch in the end zone. I thought it was a good throw from Locke. Really nice adjustment to the ball from Trech, which I think is another thing that's underrated. We talk about his route running and his ability to get open. He's got a really good read on the ball, and he can adjust appropriately. And that was a great example of what that looks like and why he needs to be way more involved than he is now. All right, the biggest surprise, in a good way, someone, either a play or a person or someone that really surprised you in yesterday's game.
The biggest surprise, I think it's probably got to be Cheeks to me. Like, I wasn't expecting him to go out there and make a difference in that game, and he had a sack and a half in this game. And honestly, I thought it was 2 clean sacks. Somebody got kind of nudged into it when he was wrapping up on the one and got a half a sack on it. But I would probably say I wouldn't have really argued it if they gave him the full sack on that one too. But yeah, I thought he was a guy who absolutely, his level of mobility really stood out in this game.
Somebody answers to the first question. Evan Gabriel says the Trech run after the catch. Cujo says the Dupree catch, hands are certified. That was pretty sick. He made a really nice catch.
If you've seen some of the catches he's got on his high school film,
yeah,
that's not surprising. He's made way tougher catches than that.
But it's big to do it. It's definitely big
absolutely.
to do it. For me, it's Braedyn Locke. I think the poise that he had in the second half, I was very impressed with that. And boy, does he need that confidence to grow in any way throughout the rest of this season. Biggest disappointment. I'll start here. I hate to say it, but I have to say Will Pauling, just because I felt like, yes, he got hurt and I don't want that. But before that, like the play that got intercepted, it literally, he went through, it was a tough catch, but into his breadbasket, basically up onto his back and then picked off. Mm-hmm. I just feel like every time we need a big play from him, he hasn't been as clutch as he was last year. Anytime absolutely. We needed a play, Pauling was there. And this year, he's just kind of another guy on the offense. He's an important piece of what we do, but he hasn't been a difference maker like we expected him to be. And as even in a game like this, I still say he was my biggest disappointment. What about you?
I think I'd probably agree with that. Like he has not been good. And I hate to say it because I do like Pauling as a player. And it's not just because I like Trech. We needed somebody to rely on in these first few games, and he just hasn't been that guy. Like, when I look at our wide receiver room, it seems like there's a lot of guys that are struggling for confidence, and he was the one guy I didn't think we'd have to worry about that. And it seems like that's been a huge problem for him so far this year. That needs to stop. They need everybody clicking on all cylinders going forward for this offense to be what it can be. And if he can't get his head together, then Trech probably will take that role from him, because they have to play whoever can give them offense right now. Like,
they need to play Trech, period. There's no question about it. We can't
afford to take playmakers off the field. Wherever we can get production, the coaching staff has to take it. You got to stop dealing with egos at this point. I don't care who you're potentially dealing with in the locker room. You look at this, when it comes down to it, these guys want to win. And you saw how the locker room was after this game. That tells me how huge of a relief it was to this team to finally have a game where it's like, oh my God, we played really well as a group. Like, this is what we came here for.
And social media, these guys all read it. They see what former players have been saying about the program, things like that. It's nice for their confidence in that regard as well. Yeah. A couple of really good answers here about this biggest disappointment. Cujo says muff punt again. Yeah, that's yikes. We really
our biggest weapon, the punter, who apparently can cause fumbles on demand.
Yeah. And I'll say picking out of bounds. Really, can we stop with the kicking out of bounds? Yeah. Tyler Schubert says Fickell's time management at the end of the second quarter. That is a big disappointment. And I think Fickell has to be better in that situation. Zach Bartz, I wanted to stop here for a second. Biggest disappointment has been the starters. Getting outplayed by backups. And I'm wondering if we'll see depth chart changes or significant snap count increases for backups like we saw Saturday. I think the trend is going to continue with guys like Allegro and Curtis and things of that nature. And I think you're already seeing that. We're not going to see depth chart changes wholesale because they seem to never do that. I mean, yeah, they even had Aaron Witt on there, and I don't know when he got hurt, but I don't know that we're going to see big changes, but I think we are going to continue to see snap counts increase for the guys that we want to, because at this point, you can hear Fick in the press conferences. He knows what's going on. He understands, and he has made comments about the right guys needing to play and getting people like Dupree more carries and things of that nature. So I do expect those numbers to go up. I'm assuming you do.
Yeah.
As well.
Dupree playing in this game tells you all you need to know about whether or not the staff is going to worry about egos, because it's pretty clear Yakimelli has a right to be upset about this, about not getting reps and getting leapt by Dupree. And I understand why they're doing it. I still think I feel bad for Yakimelli because he's done nothing but been like productive his entire season so far. So for me, I believe in Dupree's skill set more. I think his ceiling is higher, but I can understand Yakimelli being upset. I think both of them deserve to eat into. Now, Tawee had a nice game, but I think they both can eat into his carries a little bit because there is more explosiveness with either of them. And I think that we got to take wherever we can get it.
Yeah.
But there's definitely going to be guys who are going to probably have some hurt feelings and egos in this. And it's probably going to be guys who maybe don't have a lot of eligibility left.
All right, next one is coaching MVP. So this can be any of the coaches, assistants, or anyone who you thought kind of had their unit most prepared. I was originally going to say Blazek because I think that's an obvious answer.
That's who I was going to go with.
I'm honestly going to give this to Longo. I think Longo deserves some credit for what we saw yesterday in the second half. And he has gotten a lot of crap, and rightfully so. But when you're gonna give it like that, like we have, I'm also going to give him flowers when he has a great game. In that second half, the play calling was masterful. I thought that he clearly had a rhythm, and I don't know how well that's going to translate to Rutgers and Northwestern, but if that kind of rhythm can take place and that kind of like purposeful play calling, taking shots at the right time, seemingly being able to read what's happening in the game and make proper decisions, which we have given him a lot of shit for, I have to give him credit for this one.
Yeah, I can appreciate going with that for sure. For me, it's Blazek simply because the offensive line was great in this game. Like they were the catalyst for us being as successful as we were on offense. And Locke had all the time in the world to stand back there and find guys open. And to his credit, he did it. But the offensive line was exceptional in this. I mean, we ran for close to 200 yards or right around 200 and then passed
228.
228, and we passed for 360. So hard for me not to look at it and say the offensive line played a huge role in how successful we were. Yeah, I think that's going to carry over going forward.
31 passes for Braedyn Locke. He was 20 of 31 for 359, 11.6 yards per attempt, which is pretty nice to see. But yeah, 41 attempts at rushing, 228 yards, 5.6 yards a carry. Those are the kinds of numbers we would love to see at all time. All right, defensive MVP. You're going to give it to one guy on the defense. Who are you giving it to?
I would as good as Cheeks was in this, I'd probably say Jaheim Thomas. I thought he actually had a really good game. He had a sack. He had a couple of plays he chased down that were really impressive. It's the first game I've looked at him where it looks like he's kind of getting comfortable with what we're doing, because he really has not flashed remotely as much as I expected him to. And now this is a game where athletically he finally got to show it off a little bit. So hopefully this is the start of him really kind of taking off for the rest of the season, because we could really use a guy that's a playmaker on the linebacker group going forward. Otherwise, I think that eventually these guys are going to start coming for the backups are going to start coming for those positions.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Sebastian Cheeks because he had, I think, about 16-ish snaps yesterday, and he had 3 tackles and 1.5 sacks. It's efficient, and yes, we got a lot more to see out of him, but I love the motor that he brought, and I just think that he has that energy. He clearly is trying to prove himself and earn a spot on the depth chart, and I'm all about people trying to do that and what they can do. And yeah, so even though he didn't play a ton, that, and of course, Allegro, I mean, Mike 78 says Allegro for that pass defense. Allegro had a great game as well. But I'm happy with seeing new guys come out there and be impactful. I'm not going to do an offensive MVP because we're doing game ball next, and I feel like this is going to be on the offensive side of the ball. Who does your game ball go to for this game?
I think without a doubt it goes to Locke. He's taken so much crap from the entire fan base over the last 2 years.
Just a bit.
We're absolutely going to give him his flowers in a situation like this because that guy has taken so much. And if this is the guy he can be when unless I don't expect him to do this against Penn State, Ohio State type teams. But if he can do this and beat up on the teams that he should, then absolutely he can be a starter here and be a very productive starter. If you take a step down and end up being like a 220-yard guy for a couple of scores against the Ohio States of the world, we'll take that if it means that you're beating up on everybody else that you should.
Yeah, he had a 65% completion percentage yesterday, which is, well above his average.
Is that his first time over 60?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. Like, unless he had some fluke game last year where it was better. This is like, they even put a stat up during the game about 50% is pretty much where he is for his whole career. And it's really important that we can string passes together. I think, what did he have, 12 in a row at one point? I'm pretty sure he had 12, right? Was that what it was?
Yeah, like 12 is
that's
the high.
huge.
And the 13th should have been caught.
And that's the kind of stuff that we don't see very often from him. But if he can get in that kind of a zone and begin to get those reads, and I know that you and I talked about the pass to Trech that I mentioned earlier. He looked off the safety. You had kind of said, well, I don't know. I mean, if that corner was in a better spot, he could have picked it. But I appreciate the fact that he looked off the safety. He wasn't telegraphing his pass. He looked right over to Trech, and he knew that Trech was in a one-on-one situation. And he's one of those guys that you can trust to find the ball. And he made the throw, and give him credit. He put it right on the money in a place where Trech could get it. And I appreciate that. And I'm assuming he had some kind of a key and he knew what he was looking for, but I like that. And I want to see more of that. And to me, you can't do that unless you're in rhythm and playing with confidence. Oh, yeah. So if he can carry it over to the Rutgers game and not get flustered early, I think we'll like what we see out of Locke going forward.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
All right, Justin, let's talk a little bit about looking ahead now. So we've mentioned it. We obviously know we have Rutgers on the schedule. We've got Northwestern coming up after that. And then we hit that crazy stretch, the first of which is Penn State. Justin and I will be there. It's going to be fantastic. And then, of course, it goes on from there. Justin, if we win the next two games, we're 5-2. And I don't think after the South Dakota game, or especially after the Alabama game, we were ever talking about being 5-2. And we were talking about, could we get to 5 wins? Can we get to 6 wins? Well, if we're 5-2 after 7, that gives us a really good opportunity to get to that bowl game and to continue our winning season streak. We know Rutgers is a much more difficult game. However, we saw them play Nebraska yesterday. They had virtually no offense. They do have good old Kaliak Manis, who we know from Minnesota, as their quarterback. He looked like trash, to be honest, and I think we both agree with that. Nebraska did play them well. It's going to be a tough game. Greg Schiano is a good coach who's rebuilding the Rutgers program. They are no slouch. Before the season, I picked Rutgers to win that game. I don't know that I'm going to do it this week because Rutgers isn't what I thought they were going to be. Mm-hmm. That being said, Justin, if we win the next 2 games, it puts our season in a really good light. Like, all of a sudden we can sort of gain a little momentum, which, God, Badger fans are starved to feel some momentum coming out of this program.
Absolutely. For me, what it does is if they can find a way to win the next 2 games and to look fairly good doing it, that puts them with all the confidence in the world heading into a home game against Penn State, likely at night, which is a huge opportunity. And I feel good about that situation. Like, that's a lot of factors in Wisconsin's favor going into that game. I don't know if I'd necessarily pick it a win at this point, but I would feel really good about our chances about being able to be competitive in that game for sure and have an opportunity, given the fact if they play really good football over the next couple of weeks and can continue to show growth. And that growth, I think people need to understand, it's not going to be necessarily blowing out Rutgers, but if we look competent again on offense and end up putting up, upper 20s and low 30s again, like I said, that's great. And this isn't a team that Nebraska only scored 14 on. And Raiola looked terrible against. So if Wisconsin can find a way to do it, and I think we have a much better offensive line, there's a pretty good chance we could end up winning this game. I think that these young guys, where you normally have to worry about the look ahead stuff, one of the positives of having a young team like this, these guys aren't used to, like, they're not to the point where they can get cocky and feel confident going into a game like that. They're more just happy to be playing. So they're excited and going out there with energy to begin with because they haven't been on the field much. And that's something I look forward to. Or even just now that you've had some success, you see it as a team that's kind of been beaten down, taking it and running with it, which is what I think we're likely to see going forward, is guys finally have something to hang their hat on and say that we have something to work with. This could be we could see that game as the turning point for our season, and maybe it doesn't happen. I mean, maybe Rutgers won't be that, but right now I have a feeling that they'll go into that game and the team will play really well again.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm in my full believe moment type right now. I just feel like this is the time where this is the only chance I feel like we're going to have to really be super duper excited. And what I'll say is this: if we win the next 2 games, which I think we absolutely can, we can go to Rutgers and go to Northwestern. Now, I will always be afraid to play Northwestern. I don't care how good or bad they are. That game always freaks me out, even though we're going to be playing on the lake in the small stadium, which is where they played IU yesterday and got beat. I just feel like going into that Penn State game, and you're right about it being a night game, the energy is going to be electric. And I beg the Badgers to give us that. I beg for the next 2 victories because we're going to be there. And I want Penn State to be even a little bit scared coming into Camp Randall and realizing that, boy, this is a night game. This is going to be tough. Like, I really believe that we can somehow steal a win that we're not supposed to. Everybody after those Alabama game, after the USC game, it was, we're going to lose to Rutgers. We're going to lose to Penn State, Oregon, Iowa. I don't believe that. I think we absolutely can still steal a victory that we're not supposed to get, which I said at the beginning of the season, and we're pretty much close to on schedule with both of our predictions, being that, you know, we're 3-2. It's not really as bad as some have said, and we have said. And I think that this is a big measuring stick for us. It's another barometer game. I saw a question about the lines. I also looked before. It is 2.5 Rutgers, which I actually surprised. I thought it was going to be 4.5. I was a little bit surprised. And what this means,
Wisconsin will be favored on a neutral field by probably.
Yeah, Wisconsin will be favored on neutral field, which is a little bit surprising. I think that this line is interesting and a little bit fishy, but I'll look into that more this week as I get to do my own picks. But it's a super important game. The question I have for you now is, does this, looking at what we just saw and looking at the schedule after the Alabama game, I think you had said your ceiling was like 6 wins, maybe even because we looked bad.
Yeah.
Does this change the ceiling for you at all? Does a win like this do anything to kind of give you a sense of, okay, maybe, or is that just wishful thinking, which I am known to do?
I think it makes me have pause going forward. Like, I need to see it against Rutgers because Rutgers is a team with a pulse that I want to see us do it against a team that's probably going to be at least a bowl team, because I'm not sure we've faced one of those yet necessarily. And if Wisconsin can find a way to win, and not only win, but look good winning against a Rutgers team, I think I feel a lot better going into the remainder of the schedule. Because I would say I don't necessarily see Rutgers as being substantially different from playing Nebraska or Minnesota or anybody else. At that point, you're looking at potentially, or even Iowa. Iowa is really good on the defensive side of the ball. The offense still stinks. They're exactly what they were last year. If Locke can take care of the football and the offensive line can at least stalemate the defensive line from Iowa, Wisconsin has a chance in that game.
Offensive line, I think, is going to be the one area that, as we progress through this season, that will be the reason that we can stay in games.
They'll decide what our final record is. Absolutely.
100%. And yes, now you could argue that on the opposite side of the ball, the lack of pass rush and the lack of depth on the defensive line could also negatively affect our record, which it will, and it already has. But in these next 2 games, and then the tough stretch where we can hopefully steal one, the offensive line is going to be able to keep drives alive, right? Hopefully we can continue to push the ball. Now we've got a solid running back rotation that we're probably looking at. Braedyn Locke looks to be settling in. Trech Kekahuna has had his coming out party. Darrion Dupree has had his coming out party. Xavier Lucas is playing well. Like, there are pieces and there is a recipe for this team to still get to 7 wins. I firmly believe this. And lightning could strike and we could get to 8. But 7 wins means the 23rd consecutive winning season, which is a really big deal that I love, and I think it's extremely important. 6-6 will certainly get you into bowl, but 7-5 really has that winning record, and I really, really hope that we can do that. And it starts this week. It starts with Rutgers, and I think we're going to learn a lot from our team, but we have learned a lot, and it's extremely important. And I just can't say enough how happy I am, and it makes all Badger fans so excited that we actually beat the tar out of this team.
If the offense actually starts clicking, they will be the best unit out there out of any of the teams that we face between Rutgers, Northwestern, Nebraska, and Minnesota, without a doubt. They'll be the best offense on the field in any of those games. Iowa, they'll be better than them offensively. The question will be, how big of a difference is that against their defense? And if we can stop the Iowa run game, I mean, the offense doesn't even need to be that great.
I don't know that we have the defensive line to stop the Iowa.
I don't know if we do either, but I don't. It's so hard because Ohio State had no problem stopping them, but we're not. Ohio. It's not the same ballpark. But I'm saying is that if they were really a high quality, I'd expect them to still be able to be somewhat productive, and they were just nothing. Part of it is McNamara is a terrible quarterback.
Bo Dragon says, what if they go 5-2, then wind up 5-7 or 6-6? Will you still be happy? I won't really be happy unless we're 7-5, Bo, because I just feel like that's what this team should be doing, even with the tough schedule. But obviously I want to go to a bowl game. I'm not going to be happy for anything less than 7-5, but I mean, the bottom line is this team isn't where it needs to be yet. I still believe in Fickell, and I believe in the growth of this team and the trajectory and the arc that we're on. But no, I'm not going to be. If we go 5-7, there's no happiness associated with a 5-7 record.
If we go 5-2 and somehow lose to Nebraska and Minnesota, I would consider that a failure.
Yeah,
because those teams are not substantially better than any of these others.
Yeah, I mean, losing to Minnesota automatically makes it an unhappy season. That can't be what it is. And I know there's Minnesota fans are like living on cloud 9 right now. Just keep living there. And they could have been 2-4, by the way, had they lost this game, which really would have been great. I hate the fact
I was hoping for it, to be quite honest.
I hate the fact that they've actually, because their schedule kind of lightens up, like it dramatically lightens up until it gets to the end, where I think they just play Penn State and us. I'm not sure how it lines up, but that they've already played some of their tough games with Iowa and USC. So I don't love Minnesota's record. But Justin, elsewhere in the Big Ten, we kind of touched on USC. You did your rant at the beginning of the show. USC got beat by Minnesota. Yikes. Indiana continues to just do what they're doing. It's shocking, I think, but Kurt Cignetti is playing a good brand of football. In the power rankings that I submitted this week, I have Indiana at like number 4 or 5 in the Big Ten. They're playing.
I said that last week. I'm pretty sure that they're the 4th best team in the Big Ten, and I stand by that because they're dropping 40 plus on everybody offensively. Like their offense is legit, and they're very good in the trenches. The defense was not as good in that last game. Like I give a little bit of pause when I look at it, and you give up 24 points to Northwestern, who's not very good. But they don't really face anybody till I think Michigan and
Ohio State. They have back-to-back weeks.
And I don't think that Michigan necessarily scares. I think they'll score on Michigan. I think the offense is that good that they'll be able to still do things, because I don't think it's necessarily all playmakers with them. I think they actually have a really good scheme. And I think that's going to open some things up for them, and they'll be able to put points on the board. I don't know if I can say the same about Michigan. They're kind of a train wreck, and unless the defense can actually clamp down everybody that they play, I said it before the season. I'm like, they're going to take a big step back offensively, and if they can't score points, it doesn't matter how good that defense is. Eventually, they're going to crack.
Michigan is really bad. There's several of us like podcast hosts that will submit power rankings every week, and I submitted mine this week. And man alive, I put Michigan at like 10th or 11th. I mean, listen, that team is bad. If I understand Washington, like it's just they have zero offense. They have zero offense, and they can't have any kind of effectiveness. All they are is a defensive and a running team that just is so one-dimensional. They're going to get caught. They're going to get destroyed by Ohio State this year, which will save Ryan Day. That's fine with me. But yeah, that's a really, really bad team right now. JB says 5-2 into PSU, 8 wins, minimum 7. Believe with JB. I think JB must be drinking something because this is not normal.
I don't know, but he's been right on a lot of stuff lately, so I have a hard time just completely throwing it out the window.
If we say that, he's going to know that we like his
we don't want to feed his ego,
and then
he has been right on a lot of stuff.
I mean,
I have to give him the credit for it because there's been stuff that I've been like, there's no way that's happening, JB, and then it happens, and it's like
JB also wants Cola Crew to play, so
Yeah, well, I mean that's.
We love you, JB. Thank you for always listening.
As Burgess Meredith said, you can hope in one hand and crap in the other and see which one gets filled first.
Look, I think in the end, we'll close the show. We'll close the show here. I think it's a special week for us. We get to actually be excited about a Badger victory. And all week, we can legitimately look forward to the next time we get to see this team play because there's a lot to look forward to. Final thoughts, Justin, before we close the show today.
Yeah, it's good to be back and have a game that you feel really good about how the team played overall. And it's hopefully something that we build on and moving forward. And Wisconsin hopefully has a season here where we feel really good at the end of the season going into next year, where it's like we have things we can build on. There's a foundation now that we can look at and say, this team is ready to take off.
Yeah, we continue to be very thankful to all of you that join us live on these Sunday shows. And when we started the show, we were recording, but we enjoyed doing the live ones a little more. It's fun to interact with everybody. So thank you to over the 120 of you who are watching us now. Appreciate that. And for all of you that'll listen to the show later, again, subscribe, like, share with another Badger friend, anything you can do. But we greatly, greatly appreciate the support of the show. And listen, hey, 1-0 again this week, and things are going to look really, really good for this team.
I want to put this one up before we close it out.
Yeah.
Bo Dragon, Indiana in the playoffs. There's an outside chance that their record will put them in the conversation. I'll just say that.
They
can very easily be 10-2.
Here's the thing. They could be 10-2, Justin, but they're going to need to beat one of those two teams.
It's going to have
the thing is,
I don't think Michigan is going to help them, though.
You're right. Michigan, by the way, Michigan is probably going to be, they're going to be favored in that game. So they could be 11-1 and their only loss is Ohio State. They will get into the playoff if that's the case.
Their record will be too good for them, especially being in the Big Ten
championship with that record, which is going to be another whole wrinkle into this. So yeah, kudos to Kurt Cignetti. I mean, I'm from Indiana. Indiana football has always been a basement doormat of the conference, but again, we give him credit. This is how you grow a program, and I'm hoping that we can kind of.
He's got a weak schedule this year, and he's absolutely taking advantage of it.
He's taking advantage of it, and it's an impressive thing to do. Hopefully, we can take advantage of our week next 2 weeks and get some wins. With that, thank you for joining us on Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.